Welcome back to Platt365. Today we're going to talk about site design. The first thing we're going to talk about is approach. So every site is going to be a little different, and the approach on how you actually access the site is pretty important.
When you're talking about approach to a property, you want to look at the piece of property and look at your access point. That means where you're coming from a public road, how you're driving onto the site, if you're going to be driving onto it. If your house is going to be built along the property line, if it's going to be built in the middle of it. This property, we're essentially building in the middle of the property. So we are using the existing logging road and turning that into our driveway.
Yes.
Which is up the hill, up the switchback that you've seen Bob working on in previous episodes.
The biggest, number one reason we bought this property is this amazing view kind of behind us. We have a view of the mountains. So that was a huge consideration. We actually, when we designed this house, we didn't have a site. We did a big architectural no-no. We designed the house before we had the site.
Yes.
Don't ever do that.
Don't do that.
Always use the site to design the house. And so, because once we got here, our design completely changed. The cool thing is we knew as we first started designing the house what we wanted, what the kids wanted, and but then once we got here, it completely changed. It went from a long house to a wide house because of the view out the back. We wanted to capitalize on that view. So then once we got out here and started to spend time on the property, we mapped out, or we drew, if you will, on the site with flags the house, and realized that the kids' bedroom had the best view of the house. And more specifically, Danielle's bed space had a killer view. And poor Danielle, we looked at that and said, wait a second.
So we reworked, we actually ended up mirroring the whole house.
The whole thing flipped, yeah.
We flipped the whole house around, and then we also realized that if we moved the house about 30 feet over and rotated it a bit, we maximized the view even more. Right. So where we had initially placed it and staked it out, we kind of looked at it and went, yeah, but what if we went over there a little bit further? And so that really came into play. Some other things to consider is to look at your weather patterns, look at your sun angles, look at where the sun's rising, where it's setting, if you have any major wind issues. If you have everything's blocked off and you're in a wind tunnel, that might be an issue. Right.
Sun is real. When we were in architectural school, that's like the first thing they tell you is like, where's north? So you can figure out how the sun, approaches. Now, we first started going down the path of solar power on this property, and as you can see, today is a bright, sunny, gorgeous day. But we're in the Pacific Northwest. I could do a whole video on all the research I did on solar power and how awesome solar power is, but when it comes down to it, we just don't get enough sun here to do it off the grid.
You can.
Right.
It just gets cost prohibitive.
It's not the solar panels or the inverter or any of that stuff, it's the batteries. And the batteries themselves, you have to look into, I'm gonna start talking about kilowatt hours and charge cycles and all that stuff. So I'll stop right there. I'll skip to the end. It would cost about $80,000 just in batteries to make it through 10 days here in the Pacific Northwest with no sun. If you're in Arizona, Utah, Nevada, you don't have to worry about that.
Totally different math.
You can use,
because your sun hours are totally different.
You only have a couple batteries, you're good. We would have to have an entire battery bank to get us through those cloudy days. So, utilities is how we got there. Wind, as you can tell, I don't know if you can hear the wind coming through here. This at the top of this hill can be a little bit windy. So we looked into maybe we do some wind energy. What is it called? Turbines, right?
Wind turbines. But then we also, with the design of the house, we took that into consideration structurally speaking. There's some considerations you need to make sure that, the wind coming up the hill isn't going to catch underneath your roof and pull your house right out of the ground. So there's things for that.
Back to the sun angles. So as the sun is, rising and setting and doing its thing, you really want to focus on, view for your windows, but also passive solar energy, like which way is facing north, which way is facing south. Obviously your southern, we're in the northern hemisphere, so your southern windows are going to have that full sunlight. Your northern windows are going to get that diffused light bouncing off of clouds and trees and all that stuff. which is a softer, less direct light. So those are things to take into account on your site plan. But to be honest, the view was really what was driving us.
The view was driving it, and
it just happens that the sun is on the right angle. So we didn't have to worry about like a crazy intense amount of sun coming in, you know, into the living room or dining room or whatever.
No.
So that was nice.
So do you want to dive into utilities right now?
Utilities. We talked about power a little bit.
You want me to sum up?
Yeah, because I'll do 45 minutes on utilities. So.
Okay. We need a well. We need a source of fresh water. We need power. And we need septic because we are too far away to tie into any kind of sewer system. There actually isn't a sewer system.
There's no sewer and there's no water.
And there's no water system to tie into. There is power, and we'll get into that. And when you're constructing them, you have to get the well first so that you can get the water for the septic, but you also have to have the power in to be able to power the well and the septic. But before you can get the septic going, you have to get the well water tested.
Right.
And the septic and the well are submitted at the same time, but they go under two different submittals. And
it's complicated. But you know, like, people are super helpful. So like, we've just been on the ball. Every morning we wake up, power, water, sewer, and we call and we ask questions, and people are super helpful. The guy that's doing the well right now with coronavirus, well, he doesn't have the coronavirus, but he can't come out and physically do the well because it's not considered an essential service. So we're on hold with the well guy. Because he could right now, right?
No, he can't. Because the governor shut down non-essential services, so the health department had to shut down to non-essential services. Essential services for the health department right now are maintaining or repairing existing public services. So any new work is non-essential, so they aren't even considering processing anything on the new work. As soon as that ban is lifted, then they can process it, and then our well guy can get back to work.
We went through the septic design. We have it designed. It's ready to go. We know where it's going to go, which sets up how far your well is away from your septic. So we know where the well's going to go. That's ready to go, except for county processing.
Yeah.
Power is like the only thing we're actually moving forward on, which is cool, because it'd be great to have. If we have power up here, I could put the RV up here. Well, that's debatable. Lisa really likes having hookups. Water and
I like
sewer.
Water. Call me crazy.
We can bring water up here. So anyways.
I like lots of water.
Tomorrow, I'm meeting with the power company. I think it's called Penn Light. And they're going to start the design process, which means we know where we're pulling power from. And they're going to figure out how to get it to here. We have to be 200. So the way this works is you get a primary connection and you get a secondary connection. Your primary connection is coming from like wherever the street is, and that is going to be run by the power company. They do I mean, I can trench, and I will be trenching, but they do all the connections, they do all the power lines. I can't run any of that stuff. And then they set up a transformer on my site, and that can be no further away than 200 feet from my house. So I get 200 feet that I get to do myself. So once that transformer's there, I can dig the trench, I can lay the wire, I could even connect stuff if I really wanted to. I'll probably hire somebody to do that. But that's how power works, and that's tomorrow we're gonna actually get started on that. Two other items that a lot of people have to consider is property line setbacks. We have 18 acres, so we don't have to really worry about that too much. I mean, we do have a property line that's like, I don't know, 200 feet that way.
The biggest thing for us right now is our well, it must be a minimum of 100 feet away from a property line. It also has to be 100 feet away from any portion of the septic system, because you don't want like those
not good. So the property line setback, also height restrictions is something that some people have to worry about. We're just doing a single-story house, so we essentially in New York had a 3-story house. We had a 2-story with a walkout basement, and we had all these rooms, and we never used. So we're going small. We're not doing a tiny home, but we're doing a smaller home.
Yeah. We purchased this land after it had been logged, and kind of this top clearing area is where it makes sense to put a house, and that's where we want to put our house. That's what we're doing. But we've also looked around at the couple trees that were left because it was not completely, what is it called? Clear cut or whatever it is.
Yeah, they
didn't cut
30,
everything down.
No, 20% of the trees they had to keep by the state regulation.
Yeah.
And so they did, and they're kind of randomly dispersed.
Yeah, so we've looked around at where those trees are, and I apparently have some fears of trees falling on houses.
Yeah.
Like, that's a thing with me.
She freaks
I really
out about
do. It's illogical, and it just is. So
if
we're not
like in our other house, it would creak, the tree would like, she's like, honey, what's happening? I'm like, it's just the tree, it's fine.
And then we cut them down, and it was great.
So we didn't want any trees around, but what you need to consider when you're looking at a site is there could be a nice big oak tree that you're like, we want to keep that tree. And so consider keeping as much of it as you can that doesn't, she has a phobia of trees falling on houses. So we have, as you can see, so right behind us, this is the house will be right behind us.
Yeah.
And we have no trees around.
Yeah.
So
we have some stumps to deal with, and even when you're thinking about what vegetation you want to keep, obviously if you have like a big oak or some big tall trees or something, you do need to think about their root system.
Yeah.
So that's just one more consideration.
Another thing is, so the slope, this is on a hillside, and we had to actually have a landslide assessment of this property. There are setbacks from slopes that need to be considered so that your house doesn't go down the hill. This slope is not that severe, so we don't have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, it's like a 60% slope or something. If you're greater than a 60% slope, then you have setbacks from the top of and the bottom of those slopes, just to make sure that the hillside doesn't move and either take your house with it or land on top of your hillside, on top of your house if you're at the bottom of it.
Right. Another consideration is weather. So in the Northeast, where we're lived for 15 years, you have a frost line, heave line. What's it called?
Frost
heave?
line.
Frost heave. So essentially 4 feet down, you need to go. And what a lot of people in the Northeast do is, since they're going 4 feet down, they go another 4 feet, and now you have a basement. We don't have that issue here in Washington, so we are not doing a basement. And that's that. Water displacement mitigation. What does that mean? Well, when the water hits your roof, it has to go somewhere, and a lot of counties, cities, building codes are concerned with creating too much water and landslides and flooding and all that. It's a little silly here with 18 acres. I think we have enough land for the water to dissipate, but it's part of the code. So what we did is, on the other side of the house, we have kept the vegetation. The rest of this, like what we're standing on, we're gonna be doing some landscaping and some things. So we've basically cleared the vegetation out. On that side of the house, we've left the vegetation because as the water comes off to the gutters and down to the downspouts, it has a place to go. And
the vegetation catches it and
right.
puts it into the ground instead of just shooting it off the ground and having runoff water.
Right, because what you would have to do in order to pass, building permits and code and all that stuff is, I think it's like 6 inches of grass. So people go out and actually buy sod out their gutters, and I'm like, that's crazy. We're just going to leave that vegetation alone, and it'll absorb that water.
And where this really comes into play is when you're in a more urban environment and you have lot coverage ratios. A lot of our early work was done in Southern California, and that became a huge factor where anything paved, including the roof of your house, the driveway, sidewalks, anything that was a hard, non-permeable surface went into your lot coverage factor, and that dealt with your rainwater, which they don't have a lot of anyways, but they wanted to keep it on the site. Here, it's not really an issue.
Yeah, we also, I don't know if you can see, right behind us is the driveway right here. That we created. We also have the driveway that the loggers created. That's also considered hardscape. So that water mitigation has to happen, and we don't know where we've hired a company to figure that out, and they're going to tell us we might need to do a retention pond or something down below. Last but not least is the wetlands. Now, again, Pacific Northwest, there's a lot of wetlands up here. You have to be specific distances away from the wetlands. This is almost like property line setback, but you could have a wetland in your property that you can't build near, so you have to take that into account. And back to the hill that I spent so much time on, there has to be specific there's county regulations for the fire department. 12%, if you've been watching our videos, you know 12%, 12 feet wide. And that is my mantra as I'm working on this driveway, because it's sometimes 12%, sometimes 12 feet wide, occasionally neither. And I've been struggling with that. But I have somebody coming to help as soon as all this coronavirus stuff is gone, and then we'll be good to go on the driveway. So those are, we did it really fast because we could talk about hours about design on site, but those are the considerations we had to look at and the problems we had to solve. We are really excited to share with you the design of the house, but we figured, you know, that since the design came from the site, we wanted to talk about that first.
And some of the aesthetics and the approach of how we wanted to come up to the house. The cheapest, fastest, easiest way to build on our site would be to come straight up the logging road and pull straight into your garage and have your house oriented right there. But that did not maximize views. We turned it around, so that's why we're creating a new driveway that kind of goes off to the side and curves back around into the garage of the house, and the whole rear of the house where the big rear deck is you know, facing the view. So some of those considerations, we decided that we want to move that.
Because we felt like as you came up the hill, it was like boom, the house is like right in your face. We wanted to have more of a gradual approach to the house so that you kind of had, you know, this more of a sweeping view instead of like, and we're here. It's going to cost us a little bit more, but we thought it was important. So cool. So hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up and comment below if you would like to, down below here. And we're really excited about next week doing the design of the house. Cool. See you then. Welcome back to Platt365. We're gonna today, first thing we're gonna talk about is,
I don't know. You have the list.
Two other items. She's right by the bees. Awesome. Two